All right, so what did we learn? What did I teach? What did you hear? Where did we end up? Claims. You guys know what claims are, right?
Yeah.
What's a claim?
Statement, belief.
Yeah, statement of opinion or belief. It's something that somebody can call into question. Remember I said, you say watch your step? That's not something that somebody can call into question, right? Someone can't challenge that. A claim is something, you're making a statement of opinion, a statement of belief, a statement of fact. Something that someone can challenge. You go, that's a claim. If somebody does challenge your claim, what do you have? You have an issue. And the issue is whether the claim is true. The issue is whether the claim is true. So what types of claims are there? Yeah, factual. Oh, I've got bad pens.
It's the border, the way they clean it.
We've got factual and we've got non-factual, right? What are factual claims? Factual claims are claims that can be proven true or false. They're provable. They're falseable. Non-factual claims are what? Just opinions. Yeah. It's interesting because as I watch, like Bill Maher is one of my favorite guys to watch. And he'll talk about, and several people talk about how many times Trump has lied. Right? Haven't you heard that a million times? Trump lies 7 times a day. Trump lies 15 times an hour. And you go, what are the lies? Well, he said that there's a crisis at the border, and there's not a crisis at the border. That's one of the lies. Right? What do you guys think about that? As critical thinkers now, from just one class. Yes, what do you think about it?
I want to speak up on the border.
No.
About the border?
I'm not asking what your thoughts are on the border. I'm asking what your thoughts are about people claiming that Trump is lying by saying that there's a crisis on the border. Is that a lie?
Well, if I view the border in which area he's talking about, it might be a lot of people trying to cross the border at once, and it's hard for National Guards to keep track. And if that's such a truth,
That's one side of it, absolutely.
okay.
So is that a crisis on the border? Is that something, or if he says there is a crisis on the border, is that a factual or non-factual claim? Non-factual claim. You see how that's a non-factual claim? There's a crisis at the border. So if he says there's a crisis at the border, what does a crisis mean? Right? I don't know. Not enough people are coming over? Is that a crisis? Too many people are coming over? Is that a crisis? Someone got their pants stuck in the fence? There's too many, I don't know what's going on at the border, but whatever it is there a crisis at the border? I don't know, that's a non-factual, that's an opinion claim. Can you say someone is lying about a non-factual claim? No, right? You understand that? Non-factual claims are opinions. When Trump says, I'm the smartest guy that's ever been the president, is that a factual or non-factual claim? Non-factual claim. If he said, I have the highest IQ, ooh, wait a second, is that provable? Sure, that's provable. That's something he could be lying now about. But just saying, I'm the smartest, I don't know, crap, ask his wife, she'll tell you, he's the smartest guy I've ever known. Ask other people, he's dumb as hell, I don't know. You can't lie about something that's a non-factual claim. So remember that when someone says, oh, he's lied 50 times, oh, about what? Are these provable claims, or are these things you just disagree with him on? If you just disagree with him, that's fine, you can disagree with him, but it's not a lie. It's a disagreement. Factual claims are claims that can be proven true or false. And just because most people think it doesn't make it so. Unless that's the claim. Most people think it. Oh, okay, then we can determine. Questions about that? Or can we move on?
We can move on.
All right, I expect nobody to get anything wrong about claims. Okay. Damn, that's a lot of pressure. All right. Somebody calls a claim into question, and we have, holy crap. And we have, I got a lot. And we have an issue. I'll slip and fall on tape, and then I won't be able to sue anybody. We have an issue when a claim is called into question. And the issue is whether the claim is true. What did we come up with last time?
Trump is a racist.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we jumped into the big one, right? Ooh, the stinky, smelly one, right? Trump is racist. That's a claim. What type of a claim is it? Non-factual claim. And then we had somebody support the claim. Somebody calls it into question. Into question and says, no, that's not true. You say, yeah, it is. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. What do we have? We have the issue of whether Trump is a racist. That's the issue. At that point, somebody says, yeah, I think he is. Why? Why? We say because. Now, when you say because is a premise indicator. A premise indicator. What is a premise? A premise is a claim that's being presented to support another claim. A premise is a claim that is being presented, given as a reason for believing another claim is true. That's a premise. So a premise is a claim. This one right here is the claim that's argued for. This is the conclusion. Conclusion is also a claim. Remember I said we're going to play with claims in class? And here we go, we're playing with claims. One claim is a premise, the other claim is a conclusion. So this is the conclusion we're arguing for, and it's whether Trump is a racist. That's our issue. It's also our conclusion. And somebody said, yes, I think he's a racist. Why? What was it? Does anybody have a better argument than, or not argument, but better claim to support this claim? Have you thought about it? Did anybody go home and go, damn it? When he put that on the board, I should have raised my hand, and I should have said, did anybody do that after the class? No?
Someone said that he had said that.
Ooh, that's called triple hearsay. Someone said that he said, I heard it from a friend, you heard it from another.
Last class, someone had mentioned about how he, because I remember I said about building a wall, and someone had said that he said on TV about Mexicans all being.
Oh, and we never got back to that, did we?
Yeah.
No, right?
All Mexicans are.
Oh, okay, so what did he say? Somebody said, it was in the back corner. Was it you in the back corner that said that? It was you. No, I'm just kidding. It was you. I knew I was looking this direction.
That they're all rapists and criminals.
Oh, okay. So wait, so let me just, I want to get this right. He said what? They?
Mexicans.
So he said all? He said
Yeah.
Mexican?
All
Mexican?
Mexicans.
Damn it, gotta get it right. All, oops, Mexicans
Are rapists and criminals.
are rapists and criminals. Or something similar to that, right?
And drug dealers.
And drug
Yeah.
and drug dealers. All right. Oh, I didn't put this on here. That's just, you see, that's kind of funny. You see how this claim has nothing to do with this claim? And you look at me like I'm crazy, right? This claim has absolutely nothing to do with this claim. If it's true that all Mexicans are rapists and criminals, does it mean that Trump is a racist? What?
No.
Right? It's that Trump said. Oh, okay, if Trump said that all Mexicans, now all of a sudden it's relevant to your claim, right? So we got to add that in there. Okay. So, first thing we have to look at and address on this is, let's say if this is true, does it add support for this? Is this trying to support this,
Yes.
right? Is it because a claim given as support for another claim is a premise? So is this claim given as support for another claim? In which case we have to look and say, does it add some support for, connected to in any way, or other claim? And it's connected because we got Trump, and does it add support for? So if this is true, would it make this more likely to be true?
I want to say no, but I'm not sure.
You want to say yes? You want to say no? Is that what you said?
I'm really not sure, because I feel like, I don't know, never mind.
Okay.
I think I need to listen more.
Here's something to think about. Has anybody here never said anything in your life that someone hearing just the one phrase would say, that's a racist comment? Anybody free of that in your life, where you've never said anything ever in your life that someone could have said, that's kind of racist? In fact, probably everybody here, somebody has said to you in your life, dude, you can't say that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my question to you is, if saying one thing that somebody could conclude to be racist, does that make you a racist?
No.
If so, everyone here and everyone on earth would be a racist, because we could probably find something that somebody has said that somebody could say could be considered a racist comment. So just saying he said something in and of itself doesn't make you a racist, but we're saying, you see how this isn't all inclusive of the claims, but it does add some support. This alone doesn't mean it, but this plus, I saw him at a Klan rally, and now we start adding stuff up, and you go, well, wait a second. Now all of a sudden we have a little more support for it. But this alone is like, well, okay, this is kind of a weak support, because who hasn't said something stupid, racist, dumb, unthinking, you didn't mean, you did mean, but you didn't want anyone to hear it, whatever it may be, right? We've all done that. So you go, okay, so that's the first thing to look at. Second thing, then, once you get past that point, is it is used properly. Then we look at the actual claim, and we say, is it a non-factual or factual claim? Is our premise a claim that is factual or non-factual? Can it be proven true or false? It is a factual claim, right? He was recorded, wasn't he? Has anybody here heard seen the video?
Yeah.
Yeah. People have seen the video, right? He was recorded. So, in theory, we could look to see whether he said this. So this is a factual claim. Has anybody heard this claim? Or something very similar to that? Would anybody here be surprised if he didn't say that? No?
Well, yeah.
You'd be surprised if he didn't say it? Okay.
Because it's something that, it was covered by all type of media saying that.
All over the place,
Yeah,
right? Didn't you hear
especially
from...
like in the Hispanic community, it was all over.
That's right.
So.
All over. And
Yeah.
you probably heard that he said that, right?
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then he probably meant it.
Probably.
That son of a bitch racist, right?
Yes.
So, did he really say that? Who actually heard him say these words? All Mexicans are rapists. You heard him say it.
Not live, but on video.
Yeah, you heard the words
Yeah.
on TV.
Yeah.
The words come out of his mouth.
Tell you what, I'll give you $100 if you can show me where he says it. We have YouTube. Let's play it. Anybody want to take? Actually, let's do this. I'll bet anybody here 2-to-1 odds. I'll give you 200. You give me 100 if he said this.
Is that 100 on site?
Right.
I got the money.
'Cause I got a card.
Oh, run your card. Get my little clip on the top of my phone.
Where?
Is anybody that confident? I'm that confident that he did not say it. What is it? This. But we want to believe he did because of the narrative. Remember when I told you at the very beginning of this class, as part of this class we need to check our biases at the door, and part of the biases are the things that we think we know to be true. And when we hear things that we think we know fit into a narrative, we run with it. The media loves to do this. don't they? If somebody is shot, the first thing they do, if the cops shoot somebody, what's the first thing the police do? I'm sorry, the media does. First thing the media does is they find out
They're black or white.
if the guy's black or white that was shot. If he's black, then the first thing they do is they do what? Find out if the cop's white. If it is, what do? They report. White officer shoots black man. If it's a black officer that shoots him, it's just suspect shot. If it's a white officer that gets shot by a black officer, suspect shot. But because there's no narrative around it. Since there's a narrative and we're sensitive about the fact that black individuals are being shot by white cops, now that's newsworthy. So now that's a relevant fact to report. And when we see that ad, or that, not ad, it is an ad really, right? When we see that headline, we go, ah, and we click on it. Because it fits into that narrative. We go, those sons of bitch did it again, right? That's what we need to avoid, is that bias, that inherent bias that makes us presume things. As critical thinkers, we need to wait and say, what? Let me read the facts. And when somebody's clickbaiting, isn't that what they're doing? When someone's clickbaiting us, we need to see it for what it is. And we all think, well, since we, here's how you know when a racist, or here's how you know if somebody says something racist. Very easy, according to the media and what we know. All you have to know is if they are racist. Because we all know that racists are the ones that say things that are racist. And anything a racist says is what?
Racist.
Racist, because by definition they're a racist, right? So all you have to do is say Trump is a racist, and then as a result, everything he says after that is racist. And so we look for it, don't we? If he says, oh, I went over and had some tacos, and oh, you son of a bitch, you racist. Right? What makes that racist? Well, because you're a racist, so anything a racist says is racist by definition. And if somebody isn't a racist, then no matter what they say, they can't be racist because they're non-racist, and so no matter what they say, it's not racist. You see how that happens? Right?
Yeah.
And we've heard people who say things you go, oh well, that's okay because they're not a racist. Right? So it's that type of bias as critical thinkers we need to step back and go, wait a second, no, we can't be part of that problem. That's a problem that's destroying America. We need America to be open-minded, presuming that people are all saying things that are positive and are on our side, unless they go out of their way to prove differently. Let me tell you a quick story. I was driving down the road one day, and I was being a dick. This was when I was younger. I've stopped being a dick when I drive ever since, maybe a couple of years ago. And I've realized, what's the point, right? I mean, I'm trying to become better and better every day. So that was one of the things that I held on to, was dick driving. And so back then I was driving along, and I don't know what I did. And some guy I thought cut me off. Probably had no idea when I was there. You know, I'm coming up on it 120 miles an hour, and he moves lanes. And he should have known I was coming up on him at 120 miles an hour. It was in my mind, right? And so I go pull around him, and as I pull around him, I look over at him, and I flip him off. And he's just driving along, and he looks over at me, and he sees my hand out, and he thinks I'm waving. And so he smiles and waves, and then he realizes that I'm not waving. And the look on his face is kind of like a shock. And then he gets mad, and he flips me off back, right? And I thought to myself after that, I thought, what a dick. What am I doing, right? This guy had no clue I was there. He wasn't being a jerk to me. He had no idea. He assumed, his assumption was I was being nice. And I proved it wrong. You see how sad that is? He's going through life the right way, assuming everybody's kind, everybody's good, and everybody's being sweet. And I'm curing him of that problem by being a jerk. You see how he has the right attitude for life. We should assume that everybody's not a racist, everybody's kind, everybody's genuine, unless they prove otherwise. Right? That's what we should do. Think how much things would go smoother. How much we'd all hold hands and skip and get along. Right? So, here's what was said, if nobody wants to pull up and earn some dough. I watched it a bunch of times, because after it happened, it was all over the news, and I went,
Yeah.
And it's one of these things where I did, and we'll talk about in this class, I did what a lot of people do. Some people hear it and they go, well, of course, because he's a racist. Racists say racist things, so that's what he said. And I heard it and I went, that's kind of crazy. That's extreme. Isn't that extreme? Right? When you hear something that you go, that's kind of crazy, that's kind of extreme. People would say this about Obama all the time. Obama said, and I'd go, no, he didn't. That's crazy, that's extreme. He would never say that. And so you look it up, that's why we have Snoops, right? Is this true? Did he really say that? Because naturally we have that inclination to go, that's kind of crazy, that sounds extreme. And so I thought, no. So I pulled it up and I listened to it. And here's what he said. Don't know word for word, but something to this effect. He said, we have a problem, an immigration problem in America. Nobody's talking about this. This is a serious problem. Mostly, we have a problem from the south, from Mexico, immigration issues. And he said, Mexico is not sending us their finest. Mexico is sending us their rapists, their murderers, their drug dealers, and I'm sure many people that are coming over are fine people, but they're not sending us their finest. That's what he said. Virtually. Is that racist? Yes.
I realize what he's saying, and for the class, I might be wrong about this opinion, it's not racist. He's saying that when they want to bring over immigrants, they're bringing over immigrants of criminal background.
Who's they?
Mexico. There you go.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. He was saying, to some degree, Mexico is allowing their bad guys to get over here. They're kind of exporting their bad guys. So the question is, first of all, did we talk about this? Is Mexican a race? Is Mexican a race?
It's a place of origin.
It's a country, right?
No.
Yeah, right? We talked about this, or did we not?
No.
Yeah. So Mexicans is just a country, and I'm sure that there are drug dealers, rapists, and murderers, and thieves, and criminals from Mexico, right? That are Mexican. And there's American drug dealers, and criminals, and thieves, and rapists, and there's German thieves, and criminals, and drug dealers, and so on, right? So the fact that he said some, and in his opinion, many that are coming over from Mexico, a larger disproportionate number are in this category, is that racist? It is only if you're looking for the narrative, right? So again, like I've said many times, he may be the biggest racist in the world. But this isn't evidence of it, in my opinion. Right? So you see how somebody makes a claim, someone challenges the claim, it's then supported. When it's supported, we now have what we call an argument. An argument is when it's supported. An argument is when one claim is given to support another. So here we have an argument. The issue is whether Trump is a racist. He is. Why? Because he said this. That's the argument. These two together makes our argument. And then rational people do what we just did. We look at the claim given to support it and we address it. We say, okay, how do we like this claim? Does it do what they say it does? And we just looked at it and we said, this probably doesn't. Given this claim, I don't think we've proven this. Or at least in my estimation, it's not more likely that this is true given this claim, right? So then you say, well, what else do you have? And then, there may be 100 reasons, like I said, given to support this. And then we may go, okay, given those claims, absolutely. So that's how rational people argue and disagree and have arguments with each other. So let's talk about what an argument is. An argument is a two-part structure of claims, right? 1, 2. A two-part structure of claims where one is given as a reason for believing the other is true. An argument is a two-part structure of claims where one part is given as a reason for believing the other is true. It's when you have two claims or more, you can have more than two, but you need at least two, And one claim is given as support for the other. So we know what a claim is, we know what an issue is, we know what a premise is, we know what a conclusion is, and we know what an argument is. I hope. If you don't know what any of those things are, please raise your hand and I will clarify what each of those are. Because these things right here are the foundation of the class. If you do not understand what those things are, you are screwed in this class. This is like in math not knowing what numbers are. We're going to now start playing with these things. Claims are factual or non-factual. They're statements made, like these statements, any statement that's made, it's a statement that somebody can challenge. It can be factual or non-factual. It's a statement of fact, opinion, or belief. An issue is when somebody challenges your claim and says, no, it's not. Now you have the issue. The issue is whether the claim is true. A premise is the name of a claim that's giving support. A conclusion is the name of a claim that is being supported or being argued for. An argument is these together. Our premises and our conclusion is an argument. It's a two-part structure of claims where one part is given as a reason for believing the other is true. An argument is a two-part structure of claim where one part, the premises, is given as a reason for believing the other part, the conclusion, is true. Ma'am?
I'm sorry, one more time. What is conclusion?
What is a conclusion? It's a claim that's argued for. It's a claim that is being supported. Anybody have something you wanted to add on this one, or should I erase it? I mean, is there something you go, damn it, I got the death nail. Here's a picture of him in a hood, or something, right? If so, we can add another, and we can talk about if there's something else out there. If not, we can move on to another. All right. So, we've been talking about critical thinking at the beginning of the class. We just talked about what the foundation of it, right? Critical thinking. What is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the careful application of reason in analyzing claims. That's the name of the class, critical thinking, right? So what is critical thinking? It's a careful application of reason when analyzing claims. Somebody makes a claim and we use reason. The careful application of that reason to analyze those claims. Critical thinking is a careful application of reason to analyze the truth value of claims. We use reason to determine whether claims are true. That's critical thinking.
Careful application
Of reason in analyzing the truth value of claims. We use reason to try to determine whether claims are true. I mean, there's a million ways to say the same thing, right? It's the use of reason in analyzing the truth value of claims. So if I were to tell you that I know how to cure the common cold, is that a claim? It's a common cold claim. Absolutely. Claim about the common cold. Factual or non-factual? Factual. Probably factual, yeah. As much as science can help us out with these types of things, factual. And if I were to say, I know how to cure the common cold, and somebody says, no, you don't. Baloney. What do we have?
Issue.
We have an issue. The issue is whether I can cure the common cold, whether I know how to cure the common cold. And I say, yeah, I do. I know how to cure it. Here's all you have to do. If you get a cold, all you have to do is, and I learned this from my grandmother, who taught me this. All you have to do is take some Vicks Vapor Rub. You guys familiar with what Vicks Vapor Rub is? How many people have never heard of Vicks Vapor Rub? Everybody has, right? Okay, so it's basically Vaseline on crack, right? It's got that menthol. All you have to do is take a spoonful of Vicks Vapor Rub, and you eat it. Swallow it down. Slides right on down. A little minty, but it goes down. And about 3 to 4 days later, your cold will disappear. What do you think?
I think we need to catch a cold and there's this vapor rub.
Yeah? What do you think about my claim?
Interesting. Have to try it.
You can try it?
I have actually heard of it.
You've heard of eating Vicks Vapor
Yes.
Rub? Yeah, it's a common,
I've
thing.
heard
My
of it.
grandmother told me about it. Spoonful of Vicks Vapor Rub. Is there a problem with the claim, though? What? All you guys laughed about it. So clearly somebody had an issue with it. What was the issue you had?
Does it sound like it tastes good?
Can you,
Does it sound
Yeah.
pleasant?
What did
It
you
doesn't
say?
pleasant.
Sounds
It comes out
extreme.
easy, though.
can you eat
Is it topical?
What?
it? Can you eat it? Is it edible?
Everything is edible. I mean, is it going to harm? Is it going to harm you to eat it?
Where is it proof?
I don't think it's harmful. I don't think it's, yeah, I suppose at some point.
You're still here, right?
What's the proof of it? 3 or 4 days later, you don't have a cold.
Like
Yes.
Have you eaten it?
So now you want, yeah. Yes, I have. 3 or 4 days later, my cold was gone. What's the problem with the claim? Has anybody ever had a cold?
Yes.
Not the flu, but a cold, right?
It lasts 3 or 4 days.
How long does it last?
2 weeks.
3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Flu lasts a few weeks. Flu's a butt kicker. But the common cold, 3 or 4 days, you're usually back on your feet, no big deal, right? So what's the problem with the claim? If the cold lasts 3 or 4 days anyway, then how do you know if it did anything to stop the cold, right? It's a causation problem. I could say the same thing. I could say, I know how to cure the common cold. What's that? Well, you trip and fall and smack your head on a brick wall, and 3 or 4 days later, the cold's gone. How do you know? Because I got a cold, I tripped and fell, I hit my head. 3 or 4 days later, my cold was gone. This happens all the time with reasoning. It's the fallacy of post hoc ergo propter hoc. The fallacy of post hoc ergo propter hoc. It's Latin. The post hoc fallacy. What does it mean? It's a very common fallacy. Yes?
Because something happened after something else, you believe the first thing caused the second thing to happen.
That's exactly right. How'd you know that? Just from the words, or had you heard it before?
I think it was English.
English, you learned about it? Yeah. Post, after an event, therefore, cause the event. Just because one thing happened before another thing doesn't mean the first thing caused the second thing. The timing may be coincidental, may be related, may be caused, may be totally irrelevant. The timing of events doesn't mean causation. So eating the Vicks Vapor Rub before you got well doesn't mean eating Vicks Vapor Rub made you well. When I was a kid, I used to watch the Frosty the Snowman cartoon at Christmas time. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's one of those claymation stories where Frosty the Snowman runs around and the kids, well, actually, the kids build Frosty the Snowman, they take a magical hat, they put it on his head, and he comes alive and he runs around and plays with the kids until the evil magician wants his hat back, right? And before that happens, what happens to the weather? It starts to get warm. And there's a scene in there where Frosty goes over to the thermostat on the wall, and he looks at the thermostat, and in typical cartoon fashion, you see the thermostat move, and it makes a sound. Whoop, whoop, whoop. That's the universal cartoon sound for something going up. And so he looks at the thermostat, and he sees it go whoop, 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 and he turns around and he goes, ah! When the thermostat goes up, it makes it get warm outside. And when it gets warm outside, I melt. And as a kid, I would grab the TV and scream at it and say, you idiot. You snow-headed buffoon. It's not the thermostat that makes it get warm, it's the warm that makes the thermostat move. But Frosty's full of snow, and so he thinks, he sees this one, it must cause the other one. Correlation sometimes creates the confusion of causation. Association creates a confusion of causation. And we have the post hoc fallacy. Remember we talked about, does crime cause poverty or does poverty cause crime? Because they are related, sometimes we say, I saw this one first, therefore it caused the second one. Right? We just naturally assume poverty causes crime. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe there's no causation between the two at all. Maybe there's just correlation. Maybe people who make really bad decisions in life are the type of people who continue to make really bad decisions in their life. I don't know. So, that's the post hoc fallacy. Remember I said when I had because up there? Because is a premise indicator. Let me give you some other things that are premise indicators and things that are conclusion indicators. And when you see arguments, sometimes the arguments aren't set up in a way where they're outlined like this. You know, this, therefore this. It'll just be a paragraph with a bunch of statements made. And you have to kind of ferret out what the conclusion is that's being made and what the premises are. And so when people say things like, thus, hence, so, accordingly, it follows, consequently, in conclusion, those are all things that are conclusion indicators. Somebody makes a bunch of statements and they go, therefore, we should build a wall. In conclusion, we should build a wall. As a result of, we should build a wall. Hence, we should build a wall. Have you heard Trump say all those things?
Yeah.
By the way, there's already a wall there, right? It's kind of silly as I listen to all these arguments. I'm like, dude, I used to live right down there. There's already a wall there. So what are we arguing about? We're arguing about extending the wall.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, it's kind of crazy, right? But shutting it down over an extension. So those are all conclusion indicators. Thus, hence, so, accordingly, it follows, consequently, or in conclusion. Those are all words that typically a conclusion results after that. Premise indicators are words like since, given, because, in view of. Usually it's because, but things, words like that. Well, since we know, see how that's a premise? Since we know such and such is the case, we should do this. Since there's a lot of people climbing over the border, we should build a wall. Premise, conclusion. All within the same sentence. 2 claims. You guys get tired of the trunk wall thing? Should I move on to another claim?
It's old. Yeah,
Well, see, if you guys had raised your hands and told me about something in the news different, then we would have gone with that one today, but. So now you're gonna go, I want a different example.
The government reopened.
The government reopened, yeah. Yeah, now we can have the IRS start auditing the crap out of us, right? Oh wait, you guys don't get it audited, do you? You guys are excited to get your tax returns instead, huh? You probably love the IRS.
Yeah.
You don't like anybody. They're just a big collection agency. Okay, you guys know what an argument is though, right? An argument is a 2-part structure where claims or one is given a reason for believing the other is true. So what is an argument, or what is not an argument? Well, I'll tell you what is not an argument. An argument is not what you thought an argument was before you came to this class. An argument is not screaming at somebody. An argument is not punching somebody in the face. An argument is not chaos. In fact, there's very little critical thinking that goes on with those types of things that we thought an argument was. When you're screaming at somebody and trying to make them hurt. That's usually what arguments are all about, right? If we were to strip it down and we went across the hallway in our psychology class, our psychology class would say, well, why are you upset? You're upset because you're hurt. That's why you're upset. And what you want to say to the other person is, I'm disappointed because I believe you've hurt me and you don't realize it. That's what you want to say. But instead, you say something mean to the person because you think, you son of a bitch, you're not realizing you're hurting me, and that makes me mad because I'm hurt, and you should realize it. So I'll show you by example how hurt I am. Your mother's a whore. And then the other person says, how dare you? And you go, aha, it worked. And then now you're screaming insults at each other, trying to hurt each other until you get tired of it and you either break up, or you go, what the hell are we doing? And you are one of those weird, creepy people who that turns you on. Or, or whatever your situation is. But you got to realize that that's what it is, right? I'm hurt and I want to hurt you. And so we just scream at each other, insults, until the other person hurts enough that we feel like, now I'm justified to move forward. That's not arguments, though. These are arguments. Rational claims given as support for another claim. So realize that those aren't arguments. Those are just weird things that humans do. So next time you get an argument, you're going to say that, aren't you? You're just hurt. How are you? I went to couples therapy years and years ago, and the therapist said something that was just so friggin' brilliant. Because men and women think so differently, generally speaking. And so before anybody, because remember when I said at the beginning of this class, I use generalities, and so before somebody raises their hands and goes, yeah, but I know somebody who's an exception to the rule, I understand that. Generally speaking, men and women think quite differently. And as a result, we assume that the other sex thinks similar to us. It's just natural, right? So women typically won't say what they mean. They hide the statement. They hide the claim in something else. So if they look at somebody and they're jealous of another girl, they'll say, oh, nice sweater, if they hate the sweater. to put a little jab out there. So they think men are the same way. And so you'll say, oh, nice sweater. What do you mean by that? And we're just idiots who just typically mean what we say and say what we mean. And so we go, nice sweater. What do you mean by that? You have a nice sweater? Oh, you didn't like the sweater I wore yesterday? What? How did this get on the sweater I wore yesterday? What are you talking about? Women typically assume that men mean more than what they are saying because they typically mean more than what they're saying. And so this therapist was explaining this to me, and I'm like, dude, this is brilliant. That's so true. That's exactly the way it is. You know, a woman will say something, I'm like, well, what the hell does she mean by that? Or I'll say something, and she'll go, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know. That's just what I said. I didn't know there was a meaning. And so he said, as a man, here's what you do. Here's the magic. So those of you who care, want to share this. Here's the magic on how to communicate. When a woman says something, you say, okay, I'm hearing, and then you try to translate it. Are you saying, for example, you come home late. What the hell, man? Why are you so late? You can't leave work on time. Dinner's been ready, whatever, right? And so instead of saying, well, what do you want me to do? Get fired and try to leave early, and then all of a sudden you're in an argument, right? No. Instead you say, I hear that you're hurt, that I'm not thinking of you and about us enough to make the sacrifice to come home early. Is that what you're saying? And that way you say, what could she mean by this crazy statement? In my estimation, is crazy. So then you think, well, what does she really mean? And then you translate it. And if that's not what she means, she'll say, no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, then you go, okay, and you hear it again, and you try to translate it again. And by just keep showing a mirror, and eventually get to what she really means, and eventually she'll go, yeah, that's what I mean. And you go, oh, okay, yeah, I would love to be home early. I would love to spend time with you. You're right. I wish I could be here earlier. I'll do my best to try to get out earlier because I really want to be with you. That's what she wants to hear, right? But instead, we as men go, well, damn it. Oh, what do you want me to get fired? And the next thing you know, you're breaking up over something, and you both had the same intent. You're right. I would like to be with you too. Why can't we just agree on that? Oh, the brilliance of this therapist. So I've been trying to do that in my life. It's still hard. I mean, we fall back into those natural, ruts that we have. But communication is important. Claims are important. What they mean is important. Try to say in your claims what you mean. Don't think people are going to interpret and be as brilliant as this therapist was with your claims when you make arguments. Okay. A claim is not an explanation. A claim is not an explanation. So remember I said the premise indicator is because? Well, sometimes because is an explanation word. It's not always a premise indicator. I could say John is dead because he tripped and fell into a wood chipper. Is that an argument? John is dead, claim, because he fell into a wood chipper. He fell into a wood chipper is another claim. We have a because as a premise indicator. Well, crap, don't we have an argument? It sounds like it, but it's not an argument. It's an explanation. Because is an explanation word. Why is he dead? Because he fell into a wood chipper. This is not the type of thing where the second claim is given as a reason for believing the first one to be true. Remember what the definition of an argument is? An argument is a two-part structure of claims where one claim is given as a reason for believing the other one. Because he fell into a wood chipper is not given as a reason for believing the first one is true. It's just explaining what happened to him. Subtle difference. I understand it's subtle, but there is a difference. Explanations are not arguments. Arguments are things that are challenging. People can challenge them. They don't always challenge them. You don't always have to have a disagreement, but they're things that typically are called into question. They're things that the premise needs to add support for it instead of explaining it. And the difference between support and explaining, I understand, is a little nuanced, but hopefully that example will shed some light on it. I could say he was fired because he showed up late. See how that's not an argument? But if I were to say, how can I make that an argument? John is going to be fired. Why? Because he's going to show up late tomorrow. That would be an argument. That's different. You see the difference? One is an explanation, one is an argument, depending on how it's presented. So be careful that the premise indicator may not be indicating it's a premise. It may be indicating it's an explanation of a claim instead of a reason for believing a claim is true. If there's no reason to question the claim in the first place, then there's no reason to add support for it. We have no issue, right? If there's no issue, whether the claim is true, we don't need to add another premise to support it. So an explanation is something without an issue.
So,
Oh, there it is.
so with your rewording of that, what I noticed was it was changing tense.
You mean
As far-
like
as
future
far as-
tense?
Yeah, current or past tense.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah, and it also created an issue. Yeah. It doesn't always have to change things, but that is the way I did it. I was trying to figure out a way to create,
Yes.
and that did create it. There could be a million different ways of doing it. All right, questions? All right, next thing, argument versus persuasion. Arguments are not necessarily persuasions. Now remember I said, we've got issues, but just because you have an issue doesn't mean you are trying to persuade somebody of something. You can develop an argument on the board without having anybody there challenging it. So not all arguments are persuasion, and not all persuasion are argument. Some are, but not all of them. For example, if I were to say to you, sit down or I'm going to smash you in the head with this baseball bat, is that persuasive? Pretty persuasive, right? Is that an argument? No. So I could try to be very persuasive without creating an argument. I can also just set up an argument without trying to persuade anybody of anything. Just do it on doodle this and this, given this and given this, this is true. The sun has risen in the east and set in the west. It's 570 billion times in a row. Therefore, it will do it again. Well, I don't know if I'm trying to persuade anybody of that. It's just a claim given as a reason for believing the other one is true. You see how it doesn't have to be persuasive. Oftentimes it is, but it doesn't have to be. So not all persuasions are arguments, and not all arguments are persuasion. In fact, arguments are usually the weakest form of persuasion. And we're going to talk later in this class about the strongest forms of persuasion. And that's rhetoric. Rhetoric is the strongest form of persuasion. Arguments are the weakest. And that's why you never hear politicians using true arguments. All they use is persuasion. They use rhetorical devices. They just use rhetoric. They want to get us whooped up, get our emotions whooped up. Create division, and then start saying, "Did you hear what they said about your mom?" You're not going to let her say that about it, are you? And pretty soon we're all fighting with each other, and they sit back and go, "Ah, ha, 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 look what we did. We get more power." All right, let's talk about different types before we move on, because now we're going to move on really to the next big layer. Do you understand all the foundation? We're going to start playing with this stuff now. You understand it? What an argument is, what an argument is not, and what an argument is made up of. it's awkwardly long. Yes,
Okay, can you explain what an argument is made up of again?
yes. An argument is made up of claims. Two types of claims specifically. A premise and a conclusion, or actually, now that you brought that up, it could be multiple premises. So let's say, give me a claim that doesn't have to do with Trump being a racist. What's a good topic? Then we can get a claim. What's a good topic of conversation? Anything in the news right now that's interesting?
Didn't New York just pass a law where it's like you get abortion after
Abortion law. Okay, so abortion, let's make a claim about abortion law. What did the abortion law say in New York?
You can still have an abortion after 9 months, after 8 months, like, even if you're like in a
Yeah,
delivery.
it basically, what the abortion, what the laws put in, what it said is, we're gonna put into the Constitution of New York, the constitutional right to have an abortion all the way through, including partial birth abortion. In fact, it even includes post-birth abortion.
I know, right? That's freaking
Yeah.
harder.
Yeah, yeah. So, meaning it all goes on the intent of the mother. So if the mother intended to have the abortion, they tried to have abortion, it didn't work and the child was born, that you could still abort the child if it was born alive. So as you can imagine, it's controversial, right? So, I don't know, how about this one? You know what, I'm not gonna get into the weeds. Let's just do this. We'll do a simple one. Just a simple one. Now this is gonna come back and half the people are gonna go, yeah, and half the people are gonna go, no. Okay, so that's fine. So abortion is wrong. Is this a claim? Yes. What type of a claim is it? Non-factual claim, right? What does wrong mean? Tough, right? Pure opinion. Now, if we define what wrong is, then maybe it can convert over to factual once we define what wrong is. But at the point we're at right now, it's a non-factual claim. So, you say, okay, why is abortion wrong? Well, you could say, how about this one? Murder is wrong. Hurting children is wrong. Okay. Here's the argument we just created, we being me, to support this conclusion claim here. So are these claims? Those are all claims, right? They are all claims given as a reason for believing this is more likely true. You see how they're given as support for this specific claim. So this is a claim. And what type of a claim is this? It's a conclusion claim. It's a claim called a conclusion. It's got them wearing the hat of a conclusion. Why? Because it's a claim that's being argued for. It's a claim that's being supported. And what is it being supported with? Other claims. And what are those claims called? They're called premises. Each one of them is a premise. Each one of these claims is a premise. That's a premise, that's a premise, that's a premise, that's a premise, that's a conclusion. A conclusion is a claim that's supported by a premise. This is an argument. Why? It's a two-part structure of claims where one part, the premises, is given as a reason for believing the other part, the conclusion, is more likely to be true.
So it's supporting?
I'm sorry?
It's supporting?
Yes, this is supporting this. The premises support the conclusion. The premises support the conclusion. Do these here make it more likely that this is correct? Yes. That's what the intent is, right? You can still disagree. Now we can go up here and say, okay, is murder wrong? Yeah, we'd all agree that murder is wrong given the definition if we know what murder is, and if we know what wrong is, right? But assuming we all have that kind of general definition, murder is the unlawful taking of the life of another human being, therein lies the debate with abortion, right? built into this is murder includes a human being, and the whole point of abortion is that a child in the womb is not a human being, right? By the way, this is a fascinating, as a critical thinker, as a person who loves argument and debate and history and all of this stuff, I sit here and I'm just salivating at what's going on with the abortion argument in America. Because it is fascinating what we are doing. Do you understand what we are doing in America with this abortion debate? We are just reliving history. Think about this as we go through this. So murder is killing human beings. So murder is wrong. Hurting children is wrong. We'd all agree with that.
Yeah.
Unless they deserve a good swat, right? But hurting them when they're not supposed to. Anyway, you know my point, right? Hurting children is wrong. Okay. Abortion hurts children. Ooh, wait a second. Now we've come full circle to this thing, right? Children are human beings. Right? The debate is, this is really another issue that we're going to have to come up with. Are the children in the womb children in the womb? Are they human beings? That's another argument we have over here. Unborn children are human beings. That's what we have to get to address this one, right? Abortion is murder. Okay, again, if that's that, then we've come full circle here. Assuming those things, which is the crux of the argument, that's what the debate is about, then we'd all say, well, yeah, abortion is wrong. Absolutely. If children are human beings, then all that's true. That's the heart of the question. So here's what is interesting about this question with this thing of abortion. And I usually don't talk about this at this point because this is loaded stuff. You know, I usually wait for you guys to, you know, decide not to drop the class before I say something like this. But here's the thing with abortion. Do you mind me just kind of throwing out abortion? Is that okay at this point? I know it's I know it's the Civil War topic of America in the last 30 years. And so I try to address it with deference because I realize that. And again, I don't have a lot of dogs in the fight other than a critical thinker, right? And you know, the issues. But I truly believe that we all agree on this issue. I'm of the mindset that we all agree on the issue. And when I say all, 99% of Americans agree on this issue. Even though the media and everybody else wants us to think that we're split down the middle on this thing. And here's why I say that. Right over here we have an egg. And right here we have a little spermie. When these guys hang out together and they meet, and all of a sudden this egg splits and we have two eggs, right? Is that a human being that's a protectable life under the Constitution at this point? I think 99.9% of Americans would say no. There are some people that go, the second that magic happens, that's a protected human being. But most people are going to say, no, that's not how we define a human being that under our Constitution. Can't vote, can't enter into contracts, right? I mean, there's certain things that the Constitution protects as far as human beings. Is that afforded? Most people are going to say at that point it's not. But then you go on the spectrum over here, and we have a little chunky. It's a bad baby, huh?
Michelin.
It's a Michelin baby? At this point, and does everybody know what partial birth abortion is? And I don't mean to be gross or mean, but does everybody understand what partial birth abortion is, what we're talking about with this law? Partial birth abortion, for those who don't know, is when the child's head or the fetus's head comes out and they...
Did they decapitate this?
They stab it, and then they pull the rest of the baby out, and they say it was born dead at 9 months. And that's called partial birth abortion. And so it's most people, and as I say this, I see the look on people's faces where they go, oh my gosh, that happens? Yes, it's called partial birth abortion. And there's a lot of senators and representatives and governors and people who say we're going to fight for those rights. And so I think 99% of Americans, when they hear that, go, that is a protected life that the Constitution affords protections to. So when I say this, I think we are all on the same page. 99% of us are going to go, hell yeah, that's a protected life. You can't be doing shit like that. Are you kidding me? You're going to go 9 months, have the baby, give it to somebody already. You know, right? I mean, at this point, most people are going to say, give me a break. So we all agree on the ends. So then the only question is, at what point does it become a protected life? Right? If we all agree that it isn't and it is, the only question is it here? 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 I don't know, right? So then we can, remember what I said at the beginning of the class, here's the problem, and we stand over here and we address the problem. Can't we, as human beings, all say, look, we all agree, let's sit back and let's address the problem. Where does it happen? Because we all agree what it is, so let's just, what's the place where we afford protections? And by the way, there was a case on this a long time ago, in the 70s, Roe versus Wade. That case was already done, and this is what the whole point of that case is. And so, I really don't understand the abortion argument, but here's what I fear. What I fear is that we've made this argument so much that I see the recycling of the same arguments that were made back in the 1860s. And what arguments were those? We had a civil war. What was the Civil War over? The North and the South. One of the main issues of that was slavery. You guys remember what the arguments were with pro and against slavery was? Very clear arguments. You absolutely can own human beings and make them work for you. No, you can't. That's right. Because they're human beings. So what do we have to conclude? Black people aren't human beings. It's that easy. If they're not human beings, then you can own them and sell them. You see the parallel? All you have to do is say, they're not human beings. And as soon as they are, then all of a sudden we go, oh shit. And so this argument is this exact same parallel, the exact same arguments that were made about slavery is being made about abortion today. We're talking about, well, they're not a human being. They're not a human being. They're not, okay. I just want to make sure that at the end of this argument that everyone understands where we're going to end up. In all likelihood, we are going to end up that they're human beings at some point along this line. You want to be the person probably that is not in the camp of, that's not a human being. You don't want to be somebody that looks back in history and was arguing vehemently for the fact that blacks aren't human beings until the very, very bitter end. That's a bad position to be in. The better position is, yeah, I think we all agree, no, but at some point we have a protected right as society. And here's the other thing that this addresses. In just a second, I'll get to. The other thing that this addresses, and it's very important when it comes to rights, and we're going to talk a lot about it in this class, and that is you have two people, two groups of people. They each have rights. What happens when those rights conflict and intersect? Who wins? Because it's not easy. You have two people. Clearly you have two people at some point. You have the mother and you have the unborn child. At some point, you have two people. Do their rights intersect? Yeah. To ignore that is stupid. Does she have a right to do what she wants with her body? Yes, up until a certain point. Does she have a right to want to live a life without the burden of a child? Children are a freaking burden. Now, let's just be honest with it. They're a pain in the ass. I've got a bunch of them. They are a pain. They're difficult. Do you have a life to live? Do you have the right to live your life without a child? Yes. Does that child have a right to live at some point? Yes, probably. What happens when those conflict? Oh, crap. It's the same thing with smoking. Does a smoker have a right to smoke? Sure. Do what you want with your body. I don't give a crap. Do I have a right to be in a restaurant and be free of smoke? Yeah. Uh-oh. Who wins? Well, for a long time, when I was growing up, every restaurant I went to filled with smoke. I get on an airplane, guess what? Everyone was smoking on the damn plane. You're in a little tube, and everyone in front of you or behind you is like, I'm going, dude, I can't even see in front of me. You go to a movie theater, I'd be sitting there watching a movie, and the beam of light would go across, and just tons of smoke is going up, and you see nothing but smoke in the movie theaters. Everyone smoked every workplace I worked. All the bosses smoked. Everyone smoked. I mean, everyone smoked everywhere. Did I have a right to be free from smoke? Yeah. Could I exercise it? No. So guess what? Now what happened? The pendulum swung the other side, and now smokers, anybody smokes in here, you realize you're a piranha in society, right? You walk outside, you open the door, it's freezing cold and it's raining, and who's out there? The smokers. They're all huddled up in a circle for warmth, going, and we look at them and go, "Ew, gross smokers." And then we kick the vapors out too. You get out there, vapors. But I don't stink. I don't stink. I don't care. You look like a smoker, so get out there, right? But you see the point? At what point does your rights trump my rights? I don't know. That's tough. And what we do as society, we swing the pendulum and we say, these guys win. Oh, now these guys win. Oh, and it's tough. And right now, the pendulum is swung over and we say, Mom has all the rights. And what Mom says is, damn it, I don't want you to impose on my rights. Could the pendulum swing all the way over and say, at this point, you have no rights? It could. And you say, but that's not fair. I know. You know how unfair it is to the child at some point? You know what? It's never going to be fair. You know what's not fair? I do a lot of family law. You know what's not fair? Men don't have a choice. Could you imagine if it were the other way? You get pregnant, guess what? Man doesn't have a choice. You have that child, he has to pay child support the rest of his life. The rest of his life, he's burdened with a child and with child support. He has no choice. So when you say pro-choice, it's an interesting question, right? Whose choice? Men have no choice in this. Supposedly men run the world. Supposedly men are the ones in charge. Supposedly there's a tyrannical patriarchy out there, right? But men are the ones that have no choice in this matter. A woman solely decides whether to have the child, and then if she wants to keep it, she solely decides that, and the man is taxed with the expense the rest of the child's life. Well, 18, but the reality is by that point you're in and probably going to pay for college and that sort of stuff. I don't know. So it's interesting, and I'm not saying one is right. I'm just telling you these are the realities of how the pendulum swings back and forth. Somebody gets screwed in every law, in every issue, in every debate on this when it comes to rights. And so it's not an easy question. And so politicians have a tough job. They really do. Who wins on this one? As soon as you say, okay, the women, what the hell? I'm sorry, the men then. Hey, what the hell? Okay, crap, then let's do. And it's tough. It really is tough. But again, as critical thinkers, we see through that. We don't get caught up in the emotion of it. We don't get caught up in the chaos of it. We step back and we see it for what it is. We go, okay, no, I see the problem here. I see what's going on here. And how do we address it? Can we split the baby, for the bad pun? You guys know what it comes from King Solomon? You guys know the phrase? Split.
Yeah.
Anyway. That was a bad one, wasn't it? All right. So, didn't mean to get off on that. It's just an interesting when we came up with this one with a great example of the competing rights in society in general. Okay, questions? So, we have two types of argument. You guys understand what an argument is then, right? No questions? All right. So the types of arguments we have, let's talk about different types of arguments. I'm going to erase this, okay? We have inductive and we have a deductive. Inductive and deductive arguments. An inductive argument is a type of argument where the premises intend to add support for your conclusion. Inductive arguments are the type of arguments where the premises, these premises, are intending to support your conclusion. They try to make it more likely. Inductive arguments have premises where the intent of the premises is to make the conclusion more likely true. The goal is 51%. 51% is more likely than not, right? In court, we have that standard on civil cases. To prove a case, you have to prove the case to be more likely than not. That's your burden. In criminal law, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. But in civil law, it's more likely than not. 51%. So inductive, premises intend to support. The premises try to make it more likely. The goal is 51%, that your conclusion is true. 51% likely that your conclusion is true, given the premises. But with inductive arguments, you can never know whether it's true or false. It can never be proven true or false. And it's never proven. Your conclusion can never be proven true or false on an inductive argument. That's not its intent. Its intent is only to add support, not to prove. Deductive arguments, the premises are intending to prove the conclusion true. The intent is to prove the conclusion to be true. They usually have absolutes. The premises usually include absolutes. Things like all, always, statements like that. Typically are deductive in nature. And I'll give you several examples so you can start seeing what these things look like. So with an inductive, so those are the differences. With an inductive argument, we call inductive arguments, we call them weak or strong. With deductive arguments, we call them valid or invalid. So the goal of a deductive argument is to create a valid argument, a valid deductive argument. So anytime if I were to say that's not valid, I'm talking about what type of argument? A deductive argument. An inductive argument cannot be valid because it can never be proven true or false. This one, the point of it is, can we look to see whether it's true or false? This one is only simply, is it weak or strong? Did it reach that 51% threshold? If so, that's a strong argument. It's more likely than not that our conclusion is true. if we didn't reach our 51% threshold, then it's a weak argument. It's not likely to be true. So those are the different types of arguments. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the two. I will try to make it as clear as possible when I test you on it, so that you're not going, what? I'll try to do that. To me, sometimes arguments that to me are very clearly inductive or deductive, you go, what? And I go, come on, come on. And I shake your shoulders and I go, listen to me as your head's flopping around. But I'll do my best to try to make it so that it's not close calls, because I understand that it's tough. You guys aren't experts in critical thinking at this point, and you probably won't be at the end of the class, but I'll try to make it as clear as possible. So, let's do some arguments. And we can start talking about what they are, given those. What if I were to say, how about this one? John lives in Newport Beach, California. Therefore, by the way, when I put a line like that, it means therefore. Sometimes I'll do this, 3 dots. 3 dots means therefore. Sometimes I'll do this with just like a little half, like that. That's from my old symbolic logic days. In symbolic logic, we do the little L or the separation. So sometimes I'll go back and forth between these things when I'm not thinking about it. So just to give you a heads up if I do that. So John lives in Newport Beach, California. Therefore, John lives in the United States. Do we have claims here? We have claims. John lives in the United States is our claim. That's what we're arguing for, right? That's our what?
Conclusion.
That's our conclusion. What are we given as support for it? Another claim called a premise. This premise is given as a reason for believing this is more likely true. What type of an argument is it? Is it the type of argument where this is given simply as support, or this is given to absolutely prove this to be true? Prove. A deductive argument is a type of argument where if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. A deductive argument is a type of argument where we look and we say, if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. And if that's the case, it's a valid argument. Deductive arguments are supposed to be valid. That's a goal of them. Not supposed to be, but that's the goal. To be valid. Valid arguments are the type of arguments that if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. That's our goal of our deductive arguments. And you look and say, is that the goal here? And you can kind of read through and say, is the goal here to prove our conclusion true if this is true? And you see how that, if this is true, this must be true? See that? So I underline if, and I underline must. So this is our analysis of deductive arguments to see whether they're valid. To check the validity of a deductive argument, to see whether your deductive argument is valid or invalid, we look and we say, if our premise is true, or premises are true, must our conclusion follow and be true? Because our conclusion must follow and flow. What does it mean to follow and flow? Any ideas? The conclusion must follow and flow from our premise. We must still be on the same topic, same subject matter. It naturally makes sense, right? It naturally flows from the premise to the conclusion. You go, okay, we're talking about where John lives, we're talking about locations. It follows, it flows. See how this follows and flows from our premise? The conclusion. So the conclusion must follow and flow from our premise. And if our premise is true, our conclusion can't be false. Our conclusion must be true. A deductive argument is a type of argument where if our premise is true, our conclusion must be true, or it's impossible for our premise to be true and our conclusion to be false, is the reverse of that. It's impossible for our premise to be true and our conclusion to be false. Do you want me to write that down too? Impossible for premise to be true and conclusion false. These are both definitions of validity of a deductive argument. Validity of a deductive argument. Valid deductive arguments are the kinds that if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true, or the inverse of that is it's impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion false. So you look at this one and you say to yourself, is it deductive? Yes, because the intent is for our premise to prove our conclusion. Is it valid? Is it valid? Well, for validity, we must, if our premises are true, conclusion must be false. Okay, so let's do that. If it's true, must, if that's true, must that follow? Or is it impossible for the premise to be true and the conclusion false? Well, if this is true, is it possible for this to be false? See either way how that works? So you say, okay, if it's true that John lives in Newport Beach, California, must it follow that John lives in the United States? Yeah. Why is that? Because, how can it be proven?
Because Newport Beach is in California.
Okay, do you see how you all read that into it? That's called, what you just did is called an implied premise. An implied premise is a premise that must be read into an argument, typically deductive argument, to make it valid. Or sometimes it's necessary in an inductive argument to make it strong. But an implied premise, number one, is one that's needed to make an argument valid or strong, but it's also one that we hear and read into it automatically. I'll give you an example, another example. If I were to say, I'm running for Congress, and I'm running for Congress against Sally Smith, and you in Nevada deserve a congressman for you that is not a stupid, stinking, fall-down drunk. So vote for me. What did you hear?
That Sally is a drunk.
Didn't you hear Sally's a stupid, stinking, fall-down drunk? What's a newspaper article going to say? Dale Clevin calls Sally Smith a stupid, stinking, fall-down drunk. And they're going to put the microphone in my face. He said, why did you call her a stupid, stinking, fall-down drunk? And I'll say what?
Because she is.
No! I'll say, I never said that. I never said that. What are you talking about? What in the world are you talking about? And by the way, Mr. Reporter, I've never heard anything that would indicate that you're a child molester. So I don't know. All I'm saying is I can't verify anything about that because I've never heard any evidence that you're a child molester. What did you hear? Then it's likely that son of a bitch is a child molester, right? Didn't you hear that? Did I ever say it? In fact, I said just the opposite, didn't I? But why would I bring that up? See, these are rhetorical, people study this stuff. I study this stuff. But politicians study these things of how to manipulate. And we all go, oh, did you hear that this guy's a child molester? What? Nobody said that. And we never said that Sally's a stinking fall down drunk. But I let you think that because I created An implication. And you all heard it, even though it was never said. I created a gap and I let you fill it in. We'll talk about it later in this class, what that is called. But it's an implied claim, an implied premise that is given here, an implied claim. And it's something that is read in here. What is the implied premise that you need to make this a valid deductive argument? And that is? We all read into it that California is part of the United States. You have to read that into it, right? Otherwise, you're just jumping randomly from one claim to another, unless in your mind you go, well, I know that California is part of the United States, I'll read that into it, and then once I read that claim into it, now this makes sense. John lives in Newport Beach, California. California is in the United States, therefore John lives in the United States. You see how you have to have that in there to create a valid deductive argument? Otherwise, you have this totally disjointed claim where John lives, you could just say, John skips down the street, therefore he lives in California. What? You have to have the fact that California is in some way associated with the United States. But we all know that. Well, it's not stated up here. You see how it's not stated? We all read that claim into it because we all know that. That's called an implied premise, an implied claim. An implied premise is one that's needed to make a deductive argument valid that we hear anyway. You hear it in there. You read it in automatically. They're so common that you don't even notice it. In fact, when I said, what do you read into? You go, what are you talking about? Now that I point it out, you go, oh yeah, I guess I did do that. Those are implied premises, implied conclusions sometimes. You can have an implied conclusion as well. Okay, we'll talk about later about implied premises and conclusions in more detail later, but that's just introducing it to you. So, that's a good example of a deductive argument. And is it valid? Well, if this is true, this must be true. Why? Because we have an implied premise that we read into it. Is it possible for our premise to be true and our conclusion false? Well, if this is true, could this be false? No, it has to be true if this is true. Why? Because of this implied premise that we read into it. So it is a valid deductive argument. It is a deductive valid argument. Now the next thing we do with deductive arguments, the very next thing we do for deductive arguments is we look to see whether that argument is sound. So the last thing on this list is soundness. Is the deductive argument sound? A sound argument is a deductive, valid argument where the premises are known to be true. A sound argument is a deductive, valid argument where the premises are known to be true. Can you have an inductive argument that is sound? No, because of the definition I gave you, right? The definition I gave you is it's a deductive, valid argument where the premises are known to be true. What if you have premises that are known to be true in an argument that's inductive? I'm sorry, invalid. Can it be sound? No. Because a sound argument is a deductive, valid argument where the premises are known to be true. So while all deductive arguments are not sound, all sound arguments are deductive. While all valid arguments are not sound, all sound arguments are valid. That's one of those weird inverse things, right? True though. Do you understand that? For those who don't, let me do a Venn diagram for you. So you have deductive arguments. And inside your deductive arguments, you have some deductive arguments that are invalid. Actually, let's do this. Let's do it this way. Deductive arguments, we'll split them in half. You have invalid and you have valid, right? Some deductive arguments are invalid, some deductive arguments are valid. Of the valid arguments, some of the valid arguments are sound. So all sound arguments are valid and all valid arguments are deductive. All sound arguments must be deductive. You see that? They're all under this category. So you can say, not all deductive arguments are valid, because some are invalid. Not all deductive arguments are sound. But all sound ones are valid and all sound ones are deductive. So when visually you see it now and you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. When I say it, sometimes it sounds esoteric and you go, what the hell is he talking about? Oh, now I can see it. Because we are caught up in the idea that truth is something we can see and touch and feel and taste and smell. And until I can see it and touch it and taste it and feel it and smell it, it's not true. If I just hear it and it's in my brain, then I get confused. But now that I can see it, you can move on, old man with the beard. Move on. So I'll do that. Questions? Yes. I thought that was very clear.
Oh,
I'm kidding, go ahead.
can you show a valid argument that's not sound?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Why don't you want to set one up for me?
No.
There's some honesty, kind of a sweet honesty too. No. You just say, hell no. What did you want? An invalid one or an unsound one?
Unsound.
Well, I haven't told you whether this is sound yet.
Oh.
Yes, you did.
Is it?
Is it sound?
You said it was
Yes.
I said it's valid. Not all valid arguments are sound.
Is it invalid?
There's valid arguments that are not in this circle, right? So this is a valid argument. Is it sound? A sound argument is a deductive, valid argument where the premises are true, known to be true. Is this a deductive, valid argument? Yes. Are the premises known to be true? Okay, we have one premise. Is that known to be true?
Yeah.
We're having some heads bobbing up and down. Some are going, no, and others are going, I don't know what the hell that means.
Yeah.
Here's the best way to do this. Act like you're a reporter or somebody who's doing a survey with a microphone. And you're going to walk out on the campus after this class. And you take the claim and you walk up to somebody and you go, is it true that, and then ask the claim, right? So if I were to go up to somebody randomly on the street and say, is it true that John lives in Newport Beach, California?
Isn't that enough factual?
Huh? Is it true that John lives in Newport Beach, California? What are they going to say?
What the hell is
I don't know, who's John? Right? Is that what they're going to say?
Yeah.
I don't know. So if a deductive, valid argument to be sound must have premises that are known to be true, is that a premise that's known to be true? No, it's not known to be true. If I were to say, President Trump is the President of the United States, true? They'd go, yeah. See how that's known to be true? The sun is a bright spherical orb in the sky that we throw rocks at. Well, okay, not the rocks. I mean, there's certain things that we all kind of universally know to be true, and other things that we just don't know, and other things we know to be false. A sound argument is premises have to be known to be true. If they aren't known, or we know that they're false, it's unsound. So this is not sound. So there you go.
Okay.
You're welcome. That easy. There's an unsound argument. It's a deductive, valid argument because if the premises are true, you see how if all of a sudden makes a difference? If the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. But we just said if. We didn't say it was. We said if it's true. If it's true that John lives in California, he must live in the United States. But we don't know if he does. And the whole question is, are we lying? This is what we talked about at the beginning, the type of claims we have. Factual and non-factual claims. Because we have to know when we're talking about claims associated with a deductive argument the truth value of those claims. And when you have an unfactual, I can't think of the word. When you have an unfactual claim, non-factual claim, by definition you can't have a sound argument because you can never know if it's true. Right? It's not universally known to be true. It's purely opinion. But when you have a factual claim, wait a second, now we have something to address. Is it a factual claim that's universally known to be true? Well, this is a factual claim if we know who John is. We don't know. Who's somebody that lives in California that we know for sure lives in California? I don't know, Brad Pitt, right? Does he live there? He's in Hollywood, he lives in California, right? The governor, whoever the hell the governor is these days?
The governor of California,
I don't know. He's failed, huh, if we don't know his name. If it's somebody that we all know, then all of a sudden, you see how this changes? If I were to go on the street, does Brad Pitt live in California? People are like, oh yeah, he's in Hollywood, he's a California guy. Does the governor of California live in California? Yeah, he lives there. Things universally known to be true. Now all of a sudden this claim changes, right? And our argument completely changes, and we have one that can be sound because it's universally known to be true. Questions about that? Because we're going to go through several of them. Okay. Let's talk about an inductive argument. So if we were to say John lives in California, there's our claim. You got a crick, whatever it's called. John lives in California. That's our claim. Someone says, no, he doesn't. Yeah, he does. No, he doesn't. Yeah, he does. Why would you think that? Because, how about this one? You know what? Let's do this. This would be a funner one. Scratch that. Let's do it the other way around. I wasn't using this as a premise, but let's use it as a conclusion. John surfs. That'll be a fun one. John surfs. No, he doesn't. Yeah, he does. No, he doesn't. Why do you think he surfs? Well, he lives in California. See how I took the same claim and I made it, I wasn't doing it the other way around? Now all of a sudden I have the one that we were using as a conclusion as a premise. See how it's just a claim used in a different way? This claim is now given as a reason for believing this is true. I could have done it the other way around. So, John surfs. Why would you think that? Well, he lives in California. Is that a claim? Yes. Is it given as a reason to believe this is more likely true? What do you think? Yeah, it is. Why? Well, you think, well, what if he said, John surfs. Why? Because he lives in Kentucky. Is that in any way associated with or make it more likely true that he surfs? No. You see how there's a difference? California does make a difference. Why? Because California is known for surfing and there's an ocean there and you actually can surf there, right? People that do surf typically end up there, or Hawaii. And so you go, okay, yeah, I can see that would be associated with, make it more likely. Okay, he has long blonde hair. Okay. He says dude a lot. He drives a VW bus with surf racks. All right. Given these premises, is it more likely than not that he surfs? What do you think? Have we crossed the threshold? Because if I said he lives in California, are we at 51%?
No.
No, right? You go, he lives in California, well, then clearly he serves. No, not everyone, or not even more than half the population serves that lives in California, right? So you know that doesn't do it. He has long blonde hair, you go, come on. So what? Long blonde hair lives in California? I wouldn't say that, well, I'd be surprised if he didn't serve. No, you're just being a stupid stereotypical, he says do a lot, well, maybe. But probably not. You guys go, really? Really? Maybe. He drives a Volkswagen bus with surf racks on top. Oh, what if you knew those 4 things and then he didn't serve? Would you be surprised he didn't serve, or would you not? You see how now it's kind of changed? Well, why would you buy a Volkswagen bus and have surf racks, and you live in California, you got long blonde hair, it says dude a lot? Has it passed the threshold for more likely than not? If you knew those things and you find you say, did you serve? He goes, no. Would you go, oh really, I'm surprised? Or would you go, oh okay. You see how that's almost on the teetering on the edge where you might be surprised that he didn't serve? Or you find out he doesn't serve and you go, oh really, I'm surprised? Or I don't know. So we're kind of at that point, right? So what if, what else can we say?
Works at.
Oh.
He works at a surf shop on the beach.
He owns a wetsuit.
Instead of, how about this one?
Oh.
If you knew all that stuff about him, would you be surprised to find out he didn't serve?
Yes.
You see the difference? At some point, you see how each of these claims makes it more and more and more likely, and eventually we pass that threshold. But does it mean he serves? All that could be true, and he could not serve, right? The tough one is the trophies, right?
Okay.
You're like, well, damn, well, maybe he went down to the thrift store, bought a bunch of trophies, went over, had the plaques made. He's a poser is what he is, right?
It's his dad's.
He's a surf poser.
It's his dad's and they have the same name.
His dad has the same name. He's a junior, right? There's explanations for it, right? All that could be true, and you could find out he doesn't surf, and you go, you're kidding me. Shut up. You own a surfboard, you own a wetsuit, you drive around, you're dude, hanging out the window. You got the trophies, you're on the cover of Surf Magazine, you own a surf company, and you don't serve? Yeah, I don't serve. Oh, okay. You see how with an inductive argument, you never prove it to be true. You make it more and more and more likely. Let me give you another example. Just to bring it home. John is dead. Shark, remember that song? Shark attack, shark attack. Get out of the way. Anyway, surf punks. Before your day. John is dead. Why? Why do you say that? Well, he was shot. Ooh, John was shot. Is that a claim that adds support for this? Yeah. When you say, John was shot, therefore it's more likely than not that he's dead? No, most people that are shot don't die. But the other thing we don't know is, with what? Was he shot with a spit wad? He's going, ah, you jerk. He was shot. A BB gun? A pellet gun? Shot with a shotgun. Okay. John was shot with a shotgun. Therefore he's dead. What do you think? Don't know where what? Oh, where on his body? Good question. In the face.
Oh, goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Too drastic.
Wait, I can picture this.
You just pictured it, didn't you?
Whoa.
Yeah, your brain automatically goes there and you go, oh, whoa, why did you do that to me? But what we don't know, let me tell you a story. I was out shooting, we were hunting. I was with with some friends. And we were out shooting, hunting dove, I believe it was, or quail, I think it was. And we're walking along on the line. Anybody been quail hunting or pheasant hunting? So anyway, we're out there and you get in a line and you kind of walk and you have a dog that runs out and kind of scares out the birds that are hiding in the bushes, or as you walk you scare them out. And they take off and boom, and you shoot the birds. How sad I don't do this anymore. I've stopped killing things. See, I'm getting better and better every day. And so the number one rule is you don't shoot the people you're with when you're out hunting. And so what happens is the birds take off. If they're smart birds, they do what you would think is the wrong thing to do. You fly at the people. That's the only way to survive. It's interesting in life. There's certain things in life where doing the complete opposite of what you think is the common sense thing to do is the only way to survive. And this is one of those things. As a bird, you got people coming at you. The only way to survive is you fly at them. Because what happens? And all of a sudden, everyone, as the birds come in, they're shooting across the line into each other. And so everyone stops shooting because the bird's coming at you, and the last thing you want to do is go, boom, and shoot across the line and hit everyone. So my friend Kelly and I were out there. Kelly is standing there, and his brother's down the line. The bird goes out, it turns, it starts coming across the line, and his brother follows it. And as he's going, everyone sees what he's doing, and they go, no! And sure enough, bam! He shoots across the line and hits Kelly in the face. But he was far enough away, and he had bird shot, and it was just on the edge of the spread that it... And so we sat there picking BBs out of his face.
Well, this is
It's
BBs,
true.
so I know that really probably hurt his ego.
I'm sorry?
I said, at least it's BBs. and
Well, yeah.
it probably hurt his ego.
It wasn't, you typically don't shoot quail with buckshot
Well, I don't know.
or slugs. Quail with a slug. Just spoon it into a dish and take it home, you know? So, if there's anything left to spoon in a dish. Anyway, I mean, we don't have hunters in here, that's fine. But in the face. So just because you got shot in the face with a shotgun, right? It depends on how far you are away, right? Okay, 5 feet away. Does that make a difference? Yes. How many times?
5.
3 times. With buckshot. 12 gauge. 5 feet away. Bam, bam, bam. Holy crap.
Poor John.
What do you think? Is John dead?
Yeah.
John Doe.
John dead. It's clever. This is an inductive argument, so the answer is very likely. It's a strong argument. Is it for sure he's dead? No. This is the stuff that headlines are made of. Man shot 5 times in face from 5 feet away with buckshot and lives. And we go, you gotta be kidding me. And we grab it and we start reading the article, right? How did that happen? Well, you don't want to see what he looks like, but he's alive. So, inductive arguments are the type of arguments where you never can prove your conclusion true. You just make it more and more and more. At some point, it's 99.9999% likely it's true, but it's never 100%. It's an inductive argument. It's not meant to be true. It's meant to be more and more likely. This is what we use in the courtroom. You never know if somebody's guilty or innocent. It's just more likely that they're guilty or more likely that they're innocent. They're all inductive arguments. Okay, so this is a strong inductive argument because it crosses the threshold of more likely than not. But before that, probably, where would it cross the threshold? Probably right here, right? Shot in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun. Probably more than half the people shot in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun are going to be dead. Probably, I don't know. Definitely here. Unless it just grazed each of them. But you see, it's more likely that there's ways you can explain it away, but it gets tougher. All right. So, things you need to know. All arguments must have at least a premise and at least one conclusion. At least one premise and one conclusion, right? Because it's a two-part structure of claims where one part is given as a reason for believing the other is true. So by definition, you have to have at least one premise and one conclusion. However, you can have implied premises, right?
One premise and what?
One premise and one conclusion. You must have at least one premise and one conclusion. You can have a lot of both, but you must have at least one of each. But they can be implied. Inductive arguments are said to be weak and strong. They're never intended to be proven to be true. They're just more and more likely. Deductive arguments are intended to be proven. They usually have absolutes. They're talked about as being valid, invalid, sound, and unsound. For a deductive argument to be valid, we look to see if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true, or the opposite of that is, the inversion of that is, it's impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion is false. So we look and we say, if, must it follow? And then once it's valid, we look to see if it's sound. So let's talk about these a little bit more, because these are way more complicated, right? So let's say, B-A-N-A-N-N-A. Bananas. No, no N, no two N's. B-A-N-A-N-A-S. Bananas. What type of an argument is it? What is it? Inductive?
Inductive invalid.
What did you say? Inductive invalid?
Deductive invalid.
Deductive invalid. So it's deductive, you think. These are clearly claims, right? And are they intending to prove our conclusion or just add support? You see how they are intending to prove the conclusion to be true? This isn't just adding support. It's not more likely. If you're going to say one of the ways you look at this is you start from your conclusion and go backwards. All dogs eat bananas. Well, why would you say that? Well, all blue things eat bananas. What? So what? Well, all dogs are blue things. Oh, okay. Well, now, do you see how all of a sudden it crosses a threshold? Well, if all dogs are blue things, and if all blue things eat bananas, then must it follow that all dogs eat bananas? Oh, wait a second.
It just sounded like Dr. Seuss.
I did, huh?
Yes, you did.
It's a deductive argument. So the premises are trying to prove our conclusion to be true. They're not adding support for it. It's not more likely, given this. All dogs eat bananas. Why? All dogs are blue. Does that make it more likely to be true? No. It's not making it more likely. It's setting up a scenario whereby if our premises are true, our conclusion must be true. That's this, right? If our premises are true, our conclusion must be true. That's the type of argument we have here. It's not making it more likely. It's setting up a scenario that's proving our conclusion to be true. So we have a deductive argument. Next thing we look at is validity. First thing we look at, and the second thing we look at is soundness. So once we conclude it's deductive, then we say, is it valid? Well, valid arguments are the type of arguments that if our premises are true, our conclusion must be true. So we say if, must it follow? If all dogs are blue, if all blue things eat bananas, must it follow that all dogs eat bananas?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do the inverse. Is it possible that all dogs are blue, that all blue things eat bananas, and that dogs don't eat bananas? Is it possible that that could happen if those things are true? No. They'd have to eat bananas, wouldn't they? There's no other explanation. Can you think of any other explanation? Any weaseling way out of this? No. You see how that is? All dogs have to eat bananas. Why? Because all blue things eat bananas. So what? All dogs are blue things. Oh, well, if all dogs are blue things, and if all blue things eat bananas, all dogs must eat bananas. This is a deductive, valid argument. Do you see how it's valid? It's valid because if our premises are true, our conclusion must be true. Then, only then do we look to see whether it's sound. And now remember when I said we're dealing with squiggly lines? This is what I mean by this. Because you're saying to yourself, what? But dogs aren't blue and bananas, what are you talking about? It doesn't matter. These are just squiggly lines. We're playing a game at this point. We're playing games when we deal with these arguments up and until we hit soundness. When we're looking at validity, we're talking about wiggly lines, and it's just forms. It's no different than if I were to say, that's the same thing. Is that an argument? Yeah, it's an argument. What type of an argument is it? It's deductive. Is it valid? Yes, it's valid. It's a valid deductive argument. If you have an A, then you have a B. Okay, if you have an A, you have a B. I have an A, so what must I have? Therefore a B. If A, then B, A, therefore B. Okay, if A, then B, A, therefore B. Okay, that's an argument. It's a valid argument, because if you have an A, you must have a B. I have an A, what must I have? A B. If this is true, and if this is true, this must be true. You see how that's just the same type of, does it matter what A and B is? If you have a dog, it must eat bananas. I have a dog, therefore it eats bananas. If you have a president, he must be racist. We have a president, therefore he's racist. Yeah, but you can fill it in with anything you want. They're just wiggly lines that we just assign things to. We're studying the form. more than anything else until we get to soundness. And only when we get to soundness do we determine whether that's true. Is it true that if you have an A, you have a B? If you walk on the street, is it true that if you have an A, you have a B? What would people say?
What?
What's an A? What are you talking about? Huh? That can't be sound. It's valid. It's not until you fill in and flesh out the wiggly lines and you translate them that we now get to the soundness. So up here, and we say it's a deductive, it's valid, is it sound?
No.
No. If you were to go out in the street and say, are all dogs blue? No, they're not, right? Not only is it something that nobody would say, I don't know, they would say absolutely false. We don't look at the truth value of this. What if I were to say this? If all dogs are blue, oh, I'm sorry, all dogs are blue, all blue things eat food, therefore all dogs eat food. You see how my conclusion is true? But we don't give a crap about the conclusion. Why don't we care about the conclusion? Because it's valid. And what is a valid argument? A valid argument is a deductive argument where if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. So if this is a valid argument, we already know that if my premises are true, my conclusion must be true. So we don't look at my conclusion because I already know that it's going to be true if my premises are true. And so all I need to do is look at my premises and say, are they true? Well, if that's true and if that's true, that already is true. So I don't give a crap whether that's true or false. All I have to do is look at my premises. Is that universally known to be true? No. Is that universally known to be true? No. Therefore, it is unsound. That's a deductive, valid, unsound argument. How about this one? Claims? Yes. Argument? Yes. Two-part structure of claims where one is given as a reason for believing the other is true. Type of argument? Deductive. We go in reverse. Trump is mortal. Why would you think that? He's a man. What? Okay, so what? Well, all men are mortal. Oh, well, if all men are mortal and if he's a man, you see how it's set up in a way that the premises are intending to prove our conclusion and not adding support for the conclusion only? See how it's not, he got shot in the face and he lives in Hawaii and he's kind of just supporting? These are absolutes that have absolute claims like all men, all dogs. Those are typically, not always, but typically, those are, did I put out, usually includes absolutes like all, every. So this is a deductive argument. Is it valid? Well, if, must it follow? That's what we do to find out validity. Is it valid? Well, if it's true that all men are mortal, and if it's true that Trump is a man, must it follow that Trump is mortal? It must. There's no other explanation. If he's a man, and if men are mortal, there's no other explanation. So we have a valid, deductive, valid argument. It's impossible for that to be true, and that to be true, and that to be false. Deductive, valid argument. Next thing we look at, now they're not wiggly lines. Now we look at the truth value. We go on the street. Are all men mortal? Well, see, here's the problem with that one. There's been so many of these Marvel comic strip movies out there that we're having blurred reality. But what does it mean by men and what does it mean by mortal? The phrase all men are mortal, what does that mean? Men mean mankind, which includes women. Right? Human beings. All men are mortal is a phrase that is used for all human beings. All men are mortal. All humans are mortal. What does mortal mean?
You can die.
They die. So, all human beings eventually die is what that's saying. All human beings die. Trump is a human being, therefore Trump eventually will die. That's what it's saying. So if you were to say, go out there and say, are all human beings subject to death? What would people say? Yeah. Is Trump a man or is Trump a human being? Some people might go, no, he's a... But the reality, if they're being honest, they would say, yeah, he's a human being, right? So once we look at our two premises, and we know that those are true, do we look at our conclusion? We don't need to, because we already know that our conclusion must be true if our premises are true. So we just look at our premises. If they're true, they are universally known to be true, then we say it is a sound, deductive, sound, valid sound argument. Now, I think we're going to go over that next week. How about this one? That's for Barack. CK? If Obama had a son, he would be called Barack Jr. Obama has 2 daughters. Therefore, not 6, Obama does not have a child named Barack Jr.
It can be proven as being true, so it should be a cash flow.
Well, first of all, is it inductive or deductive?
Inductive.
Inductive, why?
can't prove that if he had a son, he would be called Barack.
It's not whether it's provable, it's what's the intent. Is the intent to add support only or to prove it to be true? So you look at the conclusion and go in reverse. Obama does not have a child named Barack Jr. Why? Because he has 2 daughters. So if Obama had a son, he would be called Barack Jr., but he has 2 daughters. Is it adding support or trying to prove it true?
Adding support, yeah.
Trying to prove it true. This is a deductive argument. It's good that you see this. It's a deductive argument. It's intending to prove that he does not have a child named Barack Jr. Why? Because he doesn't have, the intent here is if he did have a son, he would name him Barack Jr., but he doesn't have somebody named Barack Jr. because he has daughters. That's the intent, right? You see that? It's intended to absolutely prove it. The idea is, if these things are true, this must be true. That's the intent. I don't know if they've achieved it, they being me. I'm a they. It's a deductive argument. Is it valid? Well, if, must it follow? If it's true that if he had a son, he would be named Barack Jr., and if it's true that Barack Obama has 2 daughters, must it follow he does not have a child named Barack Jr.?
It doesn't say he only has 2 daughters.
It doesn't. Are you saying it doesn't? It's not a situation where it must follow? Is that what you're saying? Or are you just randomly coming up with a claim there?
Well,
Pointing out the obvious. Must it follow or must it not follow?
if it's gonna be valid, then it has to, what's it called? I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, you do. Say it.
I can't.
What about this one? Is it possible for this to be true and this to be true and this to be false? That's what you say.
Yeah,
Say, it's possible for that to be true and that to be true and that to be false. Say that.
it's possible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false.
That's right. Why?
Because,
It's because of what you said, which is what?
it doesn't say Obama has only 2 daughters.
That's right. So, what does that mean? He could what?
He could have a son.
He could have a son. Do you see that? You saw that, right? Did everybody see that? What's the problem is what? We know he doesn't have a son in real life, right? So it's hard for us to get over the fact that we know he has 2 daughters only. But that's not what this says here. It leaves open the possibility that that could be the case. It doesn't say he doesn't. It doesn't say he only has 2 daughters and no other children. So it's possible without this that this could be true. If he had a son, it'd be Barack Jr. Okay, that could be true. And this could be true that he has 2 daughters. And this could still be false. Because he could have a son named Barack Jr. given these 2 premises. You see that? Isn't that what every guy's fear is? One day someone's going to knock on the door. Ding dong. Yes, can I help you? Dad! Oh, okay, so what type of an argument is it? It's deductive and it's invalid. Why is it invalid? Because the premises, if true, don't prove our conclusion. It's possible for our premises to be true and our conclusion false. So then do we look at soundness?
No.
No. Why don't we look at soundness? All sound arguments are deductive, valid arguments where the premises are true. Since this is invalid, we know that it can't be sound. You guys got that? This, I got to tell you, this is as difficult as the class gets, in my opinion. I understand this is a little quick and a little complex, and it'll, as you can imagine, we'll build on it. But this is the foundation of these different arguments. So, hopefully you guys get it. If not, be sure to